Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Tim. I'm a property investment advisor based here in Phnom Penh, the capital city of Cambodia. And today I have a topic I want to talk to you about that a lot of our buyers in Sihanoukville have bought up recently, especially with the new launch of Times Square 10. Many people have been surprised by how quick this project was selling. I think for context, 25% of the units were booked in the first 24 hours of launch. And people are wondering, why is anyone buying a condo project in Sihanoukville that has hundreds of unfinished buildings around the city? I've recently made an 11-minute video on the reality, the history, and the future direction that the government is taking Sihanoukville in. You can click on the pop-up above to watch it, and I think you should because it's important for context. In a nutshell though, the crash that happened in Sihanoukville was caused by a ban on online gambling back in 2019. And then of course the pandemic came in the following years. It was a speculation-driven real estate market, and that bubble burst during the COVID years, which ended roughly a 5-year boom and left hundreds of unfinished buildings across the city. Since then though, the government's intervened to help the real estate market recover and regrow. They've developed a 15-year master plan that's already been working well. It's been in place for about a year already. And there are many positive signs of recovery that are starting to show themselves around the city. Today, what we see in Sihanoukville is growing investment in the region as a whole, in its ports, in the special economic zones, in real estate, and especially in tourism. The unfinished buildings are being picked up, though it's a lot of work to do, so it's just a little bit at a time. Tourism numbers are rising again, and there's, subjectively, you could say there's life again in the city. That's a very quick summary of what's been going on in Sihanoukville. But to break down this question of oversupply, we have to look at the details on the ground. So I've just come back from a trip to Koh Rong Island, which is amazing by the way, where I spent a little bit more time in Sihanoukville. And when I was there, I actually built a list of all of the condo developments that compete to some extent with this new Times Square 10 project on Otres Beach. Once I had all these details down on paper, their location, their pricing side by side, I noticed some interesting trends that even took me by surprise. Before I show you these though, it is important to remember that much like the cycle, the real estate cycle that we've seen in Phnom Penh, Sihanoukville's condo market also has gone through a rapid boom, followed by a very rapid crash, and now to recovery. But due to how fast this cycle actually took place, which was quicker than Phnom Penh by the way, many projects that entered the market after 2019 were actually launched and built during this boom stage of the cycle. This era, you could call it, was defined by higher prices per square meter, fewer amenities on offer, and the location was centered around this sort of casino-heavy northern part of the city. A lot of these projects, not all, but a lot of these projects didn't actually aim to target local buyers, which is very important if you want to have a real estate market that's sustainable in the long run. And the demand in this boom era was heavily driven by speculation. So with all of this in mind, if we want to understand where the areas of oversupply and actually undersupply as well are in Sihanoukville's condo market, we need to look at 4 important areas. These are 1, price, 2, location, 3, amenities, and 4, occupancy rates. The data, again, is based on the main condo developments around Sihanoukville city that compete with this new Times Square 10 project that's just launched. I've chosen around 15 different projects, and most of them have already been completed. So let's talk about price first. Price is still, in my opinion, the most decisive aspect of oversupply in Cambodia. I listed the asking price per square meter for each of these projects, and they range from around $1,200 per square meter on the lowest end up to $3,500 a square meter on the higher end. The average asking price for all of these projects is $2,100 per square meter. So for context, and to put this in place on the market, the new Times Square 10 project that's just launched started at $1,100 per square meter, which is roughly $1,000 per square meter cheaper than the average across all similar developments in the city. The projects that offered modern amenities, along with the hotel-like level of livability, were almost always on the $2,000 per square meter plus price range. So what surprised me even more was that despite these higher prices, and despite many of these projects being built for the pre-crash market, most of them were 80% plus sold already. And even then, their locations, which are almost always in the north of the city, and many of them don't even offer the amenities that are offered by new developments, and they aren't even on the beachfront either. So to show you just how much of this price-sensitive demand still exists in the Sihanoukville condo market, the new Times Square 10 project is selling out incredibly fast. They had over 350 units booked in just the first 24 hours of launching. That's, close to 30% of all the units available. And I think, at least, it clearly shows how much demand still exists, especially in the sub $1,500 per square meter segment, which in my view is very undersupplied. These Times Square projects actually focus on this segment, especially in Phnom Penh, like we've seen with the quick sales and the success of Times Square 7 and Times Square 8, which are all in prime locations around Phnom Penh and built by the same developer. So now that we've got a decent understanding of where the undersupply in terms of prices, let's look at the location. Location in Sihanoukville is probably more important now than it ever has been before. I mapped out each of these major competing projects to show you where they are in the city. And I typically view Sihanoukville city as having 3 prime areas for condo developments. You've got the northern beachfront areas, which are along Independence Beach and Sokha Beach. This area's got the highest prices for developments like these and includes the beachfront condo Blue Bay, which is technically the closest competitor that we have to Times Square 10 in Sihanoukville, and a couple of 5-star hotel chains, also some high-end casinos as well. I think it's very clean and well organized, especially compared to what we've seen over the past sort of 3 to 4 years. Lots of construction is picking up again, but it still does have this casino-centric vibe that some people don't like about the northern parts of Sihanoukville. Secondly, you've got the inland northern areas. This is where most of the competing condo projects are actually located. And it's also the area with the most unfinished buildings and arguably needs the most work out of all the main development areas of the city in order to get back on track and up to the mark that we have now for the rest of the city. The third prime area for condos is along the Otres Beach and the Otres Beach in the southern part of the city. So Times Square 10, as you've probably heard 1,000 times already, is the first beachfront condo development on Otres Beach. There's a lot of tourism development in this area, and it offers some of the best beaches in the city. And in my view, it's the most internationally relevant area of the city for investment in, a condo or a place to live or a place to have as a holiday home, for example. But when we look at the number of projects in each of these locations, you can clearly see that the south portion of the city is the least saturated and obviously then the most undersupplied. And yeah, I think the key selling point they're going on is that it's very internationally appealing to a broad set of investors. The third thing I want to look at is the amenities. As we've already seen in Phnom Penh, the condo projects that do the best are those that focus on offering loads of amenities and have a long-term focus on livability. Many of these developments in Sihanoukville that were built for the pre-crash market didn't offer much in the line of amenities. Even the building management in many cases wasn't even that great. But if you look for developments that offer loads of amenities, sort of in line with what we're used to seeing with new condo project launches in Phnom Penh, and like we're seeing with Times Square 10, and possibly even Blue Bay, you'll see there isn't much to choose from when you're looking for loads of amenities. Among projects with what in my view I would say is a decent amenity offering, prices typically sit well above $2,000 per square meter for units. This isn't always the case, but it's the trend that I saw. I believe that the projects that are selling well in Phnom Penh are building for long-term livability, and they focus on good building management, offering loads of amenities and so on. You can see this by how fast the Times Square projects have sold, not just the new one in Sihanoukville, but Times Square 7 and Times Square 8, which within a couple of weeks had sold off about a fifth of their units. And compared to their price, you'll struggle to find bigger amenity packages and other developments on either of these markets. The final piece of this oversupply puzzle is occupancy rates. So when I first drafted this list of competing projects, I was, to be honest, quite skeptical, and I thought I'd be seeing that most of these condo buildings have low occupancy rates or, are completely empty even in some cases. Even in the north, with higher prices, fewer amenities, projects built for the pre-crash market, what surprised me is that most of these projects are pretty fully occupied. Many of them with occupancy rates as high as and even above 85%. Just driving past, you can see most of the units are occupied. You can see laundry in the balcony, the car parks are full, there's loads of lights on at night. In fact, even more surprising than that is that many of these projects even offer rental returns that seem to be higher than what we're seeing in Phnom Penh. There's definitely a large and a growing demand for these types of projects, both from buyers and renters in Sihanoukville. It really did surprise me how high occupancy rates across these competing projects are. With very little new stock in the sub $1,500 per square meter price range, it's likely going to become even more and more obvious that this demand is booming again over the next 2 to 3 years. So when you look at all four of the oversupply sort of key focus areas above, it becomes quite clear that there is in fact quite an undersupply in some segments of the market. The undersupply is particularly acute in the sub $2,000 per square meter segment for beachfront condos or condos built around sea views in general, and even more so with those that offer loads of amenities, good building management, and so on. There is, in my opinion, loads of potential for developments like Times Square 10 and others on prime beachfront locations. That being said, the city still needs some work, especially in the inland northern parts. But given the current progress we've seen in just a year, the master plan for the next 15 years, I have high hopes for Sihanoukville. My advice to buyers stays the same. Buy for the long term and don't be speculative. Focus on the undersupplied segments in the market and stick to developers with strong financial backing that don't need pre-sales in order to fund construction and have a track record of completed projects in Cambodia ideally. Also keep in mind that the entire coastline along the Gulf of Thailand is going through massive investment and development in Cambodia, including you've got Koh Rong Islands where I've just been, we've got Kep to the east, you've got Koh Rong to the northwest. You're not just investing in Sihanoukville, you're investing in a region that's incredibly important to Cambodia, which is a country it's growing fast, it's dollarized, it's got a young workforce, and it's got a powerful location. It's part of ASEAN, and it's got good relations with both Western countries and big neighboring countries like China, for example. So if you are interested in buying a condo or property anywhere in Cambodia, please reach out to me. I am a property investment advisor based here in Phnom Penh, and together with my partner and our company, we can help you find the best units at the top projects at the best prices. We can guide you through the entire buying process, which is a lot more complicated than it might seem at the beginning. We can give you market advice, construction updates, mistakes to avoid, negotiating with owners, and so on. I'll leave my contact info in the description below, and I look forward to hearing from you, not really just for buying, but just to ask some questions, have a chat, whatever. I do have loads of other videos planned soon, talking about the Oversupply in Phnom Penh, looking at some top projects around the country. So please, if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, turn on notifications to get new videos first. My channel is new, it is small, so every bit of engagement helps a lot more than you might think. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.